to the next session where we will talk about how we can actually use data to make public services, well, to actually make any type of service, but the devil is in the details. So what does it mean to use data? Well, certainly it means to be able to find it, to understand it, but then also to have the rights to use it for whatever you want. It comes with liabilities. It comes with responsibility. So when you provide a service, what if you stop providing it suddenly? There are so many questions, and I have with me excellent colleagues to discuss this. Teemu from MyData, Jaana from Sitra with the IHAN, Lasse from Vastuu, and Raf from the Solid project. So could we perhaps just give you 30 seconds each to introduce yourselves, and then you get a little bit more time to go into detail. So Teemu, welcome.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for having me on this panel with some great friends. My name is Teemu Ropponen. I work as the general manager of MyData Global, a non-profit based in Helsinki, Finland.
Thanks. Jaana.
Hello, Jaana, Sinipuro from Sitra, the Finnish Innovation Fund, working as a project director for Fair Data Economy, the human-driven data economy project.
Good to have you here. Lasse.
Yeah, so Lasse Albäck from Vastuu Group. I'm the CEO of Vastuu Group. And we are also behind the initiative Platform of Trust that Martin mentioned in the beginning of this great festival. And we are happy to also be now an enterprise partner of OASC, cities and communities. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Much appreciated. Raf.
Good afternoon, Raf Buyle. I'm the information architect at the Flemish government in Belgium, also researcher at Ghent University, and we would like to share our insights on how we use Solid to put citizens back in control of their data.
Fantastic. So I could not imagine a better team to be discussing these things with. Teemu, do you want to take us first around the thoughts that you've been developing in the MyData Global community?
Thanks, Martin. Indeed. So let me share, and if you can just give me a thumbs up once you can see me full screen, or actually shout out, and off we go.
Yes.
All right, perfect. So hi everybody. My name is Teemu, as I mentioned, and going through in a few minutes what we are talking about with the MyData concept of human-centric approach to personal data. And of course, we know from basically all imaginable consulting companies and presentations, enormous amounts of data gathered about us throughout the day, be it regarding whatever sector or domain of life we can imagine, as is there in the MyData circle logo. But then, from the perspective of the individual, it's sometimes a little bit scary. But what if we felt that the personal data that's gathered about us and used about us makes our everyday life easier and better? What if it's democratically governed and together with others, individuals are powerful actors, and these actors' choices actually matter? And what if we can trust that personal data is used ethically? So this is the basis of MyData, a combination or a balance of innovation while at the same time respecting individuals' rights. So the vision is a fair, sustainable, and prosperous digital society. And in such a society, people get value from their data. People set the agenda, how that personal data is used for their benefit. And at the same time, for organizations, the ethical use of data is always the most attractive option. So, sounds nice, but of course, as we can imagine, very, very difficult to do in practice. Some years ago, together with companies and organizations from around the world, we wrote the MyData Declaration, which outlines fundamental shifts that are needed to make this happen. So firstly, thinking about our digital rights, not just as formal rights that are painful and time-consuming to exercise, but rather actionable or one-click rights, regardless of whether we are talking about right to access some data or be forgotten or reuse that data. They need to be one-click, real-time rights. Secondly, the kind of a mindset shift, talking not only about data protection and us individuals being protected from harms, but rather how can we use the power of data to empower people to do better choices in their lives, be it regarding health, be it regarding their transportation and mobility, or be it their citizenship in a country or a city context. And thirdly, how do we mitigate the tendency which we can see right now of platforms and technology giants gaining monopolies? So how can we actually have more open, competitive ecosystems where also smaller players can work better? Specifically, of course, in the last years, we've talked about personal data, no doubt, with a huge beacon being the GDPR, which I'm sure we are all familiar with. And now just want to make that distinction that not all personal data is by definition MyData. But MyData specifically refers to the right to get that data out from the silos and to be able to use that data in practice freely in perhaps services and solutions that originally were not thought of. So it's a matter of combining both the data protection that the GDPR allows, while at the same time making sure that the data really does get used. And as we know, data is a non-rival good, so to speak. The more it's used, the more valuable it actually gets. So again, this is difficult, of course, requires different types of angles. We talk about the bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwich here being about business models, the new regulations and laws, the technology and the societal perspective. What is the society we want to live in? Do we want to be controlled by the state, controlled by tech giants, or controlled by humans and democratically? And of course, good developments are happening here. So the European data strategy, which I suppose many of the audience is familiar with from last February, highlights the MyData thinking as one of the promising movements, giving individuals benefits regarding the use of their personal data. And now, more lately, we have, of course, been enthusiastic and watching with a close eye the Data Governance Act, which is important from us, from our point of view, in the sense that it sets or clarifies the role of data intermediaries. We call them MyData operators, which build with the purpose of building trust in these intermediaries and giving direction for data governance. Good things are happening in that regard. So why is this important now, and why should cities be interested in MyData? Potentially, we have enormous cost savings. We would need to gather data only once to make it flow, if we can make it flow smoothly from one service to another, meaning also less burden for citizens, more innovation for business. People are getting more and more aware of the impact of technologies, want fairer democratic solutions. the tech and the tech landscape is maturing, and that's of course what we will hear from Lasse and Raf, especially some great breakthroughs there. And with the use of personal data in a good way, we can actually fight against the climate change, a lot of green solutions as well. As I mentioned, the legal frameworks are being built as we speak, and the policies and the political sentiment is positive. So we are a network working globally, kind of like open and agile smart cities, not quite at that maturity level yet, but in 27 locations over 20 countries right now, with members coming from over 50 countries at the moment. And finally, just wrapping up, I just want to say big thanks for our collaboration with Open and Agile Smart Cities, and we've just now signed an MOU regarding a strategic partnership between MyData Global and Open and Agile Smart Cities, as the topic of personal data management is so timely right now. So if this, what you heard, struck a chord, please do get in touch with me. Have a look at mydata.org. And with that, thank you very much. Really quick run through of what we are talking about with MyData.
We love you too, Teemu.
Thanks, Teemu. That was Davor, our CEO, chipping in.
Thank you,
I think
Teemu.
it's really good. Maybe, Teemu, if you can unshare your screen, we can see the face. Yeah, fantastic. No, but it's, I mean, two things on the content side, but it's also very important that we team up. So I'm so happy to see that we are putting these solid initiatives together. Sorry, Raf, for the pun. But we would be stupid if we were doing these in fragments, because we would not get the impact that we need. And as we know, not just from the virus, but also from the, let's say, digital political situation in the world, here are some things we need to figure out. So maybe one quick question to you, Teemu. Working globally, as you said, and not just catering for a very culturally heterogeneous community. What do you see are the main mechanisms that can work even globally? Because, I mean, the world is kind of diverse, right? So can you share any thoughts on, you know, what is the common ground that resonates? Why do people join MyData Global from across the globe?
Sure. Well, that's a great question. And of course, it's tricky to do, as you know well, being in the space for some time, in the space of smart cities, to do something that works for all cities or all countries or all societies. And of course, like one thing maybe that joins us together are right now, as a matter of fact, are the trade agreements, which sometimes have the aspects of, you know, the data protection and the data sharing regulatory frameworks being there. So I think that there is a little bit of pressure coming from even at that level. But in fact, you may have seen on the map, we have, for example, activities in Africa and Latin America, and was just discussing maybe 2 hours ago there. And I think the sentiment is that yes, you know, the frameworks and the maturity might not be there, but at the same time, the less mature societies are looking to do, you know, leaps over, and are watching. You know, they don't have to go through every same phase as we've gone through in Europe, for example, or Asia for that matter, but rather make bigger leaps. So of course they're keen to keep an eye on that already now.
Right. So what you're saying is, and I think that's a pretty good segue to you, Jaana, that if you want a fair data economy, actually you need to understand how you treat different kinds of data, including personal data, in that ecosystem.
Yeah, for sure.
No matter what you want to do. So Jaana, would you want to give us your vision, because this is exactly your focus, right? How do you actually make this as a broad economic exercise also fair? Now, what does that mean? How does that translate into reality?
Okay, thank you. I will. Let's see. Is it okay now? No, it should be okay.
We're seeing all the slides. So
all the slides.
Let's see, something is happening.
Not okay?
Now it's perfect. Now we see fair data economy and a lot of text.
Okay, so just briefly. So I come from Sitra, and maybe some of you know our organization, but I was very excited being invited to this roundtable, saying all these different organizations sharing the agenda for human centricity in the data economy. And I think that we are building on those many initiatives Martin was mentioning. MyData had a very strong focus in the Finnish governmental agenda. And then few years ago, we started building on that and the work that's done. So Sitra is, under the Finnish parliament, there's own legislation about Sitra to work for the well-being of the society. And since we are more and more interconnected nowadays, we think that it's very important to work also at the European level. And that's why I'm very sorry that we couldn't sign this memorandum of understanding with these marvelous organizations. But anyway, as Martin said, we are sharing this agenda for fair data economy. And when we talk about fair, that's our response to European strategy for data, meaning that we should build a society that's fair for everyone, not just individuals, but also building digital sovereignty and data sovereignty that enables data sharing between organizations. But so that the data sharing is based on permits, you only share the minimum amount of data you need for creation of new services. So data sharing with the consent from individuals or organizations enable better service creation. That's our vision. So building a fairer and more sustainable data markets for the Europe. That was the driving force for our project when we started. And I think that there are many things that are creating much more cohesion now at the European agenda, and many more practical initiatives also happening. So Sitra is promoting things that we call ourselves a think, do, and connect tank. And I think it's very important to provide those practical means at the same time while we are doing the sense-making work and also working for the mindset change. There's quite strong focus nowadays on the European agenda as well towards the twin transition to a green and digital economy. And I wanted to take this up as an example where statistics meet personal data, because you can't really drive the change if you don't make that data relevant and if you don't tie that kind of aggregated data into your everyday choices. So I think this is a very good example. We are very used to handle digital agendas and climate agendas as separate topics. But I really like this approach where you are showing the direct impacts that digital tools have on our climate changes and how we can use digital tools to enable those operational effectiveness and tracking of materials and dematerialization. But at the same time, there's huge impact on as data centers to climate topics. And in the end, if you want to drive this systematic change, behavioral change, you need to make that data relevant to individuals. We are talking awfully lot about mobility solutions, smart cities use. We'll need to do those services much more personal. And in that way, we need to solve those topics that in a trustworthy way, how to use data in a more personal way. So I think this is very good example how these two things come together and merge. So I think there are many initiatives driving for common agenda and towards the same. And this awfully busy slide also shows what's happening across the Europe. So legislatures and commission is having a great amount of different initiatives. I think they are very determined on making this decade Europe's digital decade and redefining the way we use digital services. So I think the whole environment, whole business environment will change. And at the same time, the big corporations across Europe are arranging and restructuring the operations in this Gaia-X initiative. So, and there will be a vertical data spaces, some thoughts about smart cities, data spaces as well, but also this great move from the grassroots level towards sovereign data exchange based on the common code of conduct, and also how to build the sovereign infrastructure. So I think there's so many things happening, both from the regulative side and then from the company side, that the digital future will look completely different when we are meeting again in maybe in 5 years, hopefully or so. But at the same time, we need to be very concrete. So, and when we are talking about fair data economy at Sitra, we think that this is emerging model still. We don't think that data economy, all those data giants, it's not the final model for data economy. Of course, there's increasing kind of concerns from individuals about data breaches and data security. So growing concerns from individuals, and at the same time, there's growing needs for data protection. But also new business models and new operating models need to be based on the shared data, the siloed data, organizational based data coming only from one organization isn't enough in this complex world if you want to do planning. So that's why we need to have those code of conduct and rule books for data sharing and building those smaller ecosystems. So clusters of data, and then building like what we would like to achieve is that those smaller ecosystems find each other and start sharing for data for building those shared services. That's our goal, and we want to create a kind of basic prerequisites needed for that. So just to put it short and to wrap up, I think that of course there's lots of things happening at the higher level, but we can also start very small in the local communities. If we build those content-based ecosystems, data sharing ecosystems, we already have technology in place. We need to have those agreed rules, rule book templates, going through ethical, technical, legal, technical kind of questions on how to share data to minimize the contractual costs. There will be a different need for governance models, and we also need new skills. But we can, by building those practical experiments, trials, we can slowly build more and more skills needed in these smaller ecosystems to grow into something bigger. That's our vision, and I think we need them meetings like this to make it happen.
Thank you, Jaana. Thanks for the great overview. It's very inspiring to see also how the Finnish government, the Finnish parliament, I believe, invests in this kind of translation work from something sort of abstract. You say you have to make it concrete. So may I ask, so what are the kinds of, thanks Lasse, so it works. I'm just giving a short question to Jaana here. I don't know, maybe you can just let her show her face while I ask her. So Jaana, this concretization, making it real, you talk about experimentation. So how far are we there? Are we seeing robust systems already out there which are ready to follow these regulations, or how do you see it? I mean, is it 10-year decade? You mentioned 5 years. So just to get a grip on the practice, I mean, the platforms that are maybe then not so bad, are they already there, or are we waiting for them?
they are there, but they are still scattered. So we just made a kind of desktop study, a landscape over initiatives around data sovereignty and data standardization. So that will be ready in a few weeks' time. But it was interesting to see that I think the Solid is one example, and there are lots of initiatives also happening in Finland, but we need to bring those together. So that's why I'm looking at this GaiaX initiative, because it's the kind of branding for this collaboration coming from the grassroots level. So if we manage to put those different initiatives and different technical experiments into more understandable framework, but this is something that's needed, this is something that's already tested, then I would say that this is doable in a couple of years' time. There's lots of expertise already, but we need to bring it together.
Yeah, and then of course it's also a real market, so probably there's diversity and there's there are different ways to do it. So maybe, thank you, Jaana. Let's turn our head to one of the providers, Lasse from Vastuu, and now feel free to show the slides if you want. So what you're providing are actually concrete suggestions on how to do this. Could you share, the status, if you will, from your side as a provider, as a group who wants actually to do just this?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. Yes, thanks, Martin. I will be more than happy to share a couple of concrete examples of how actually personal data could be put into practice to create more human-centric cities. Actually, it's quite interesting because what Teemu presented and what Jaana presented, basically what we are doing together with some cities in Finland and hopefully with a lot of cities in the future all around the world, is taking the best ideas and creating a platform from MyData, and then created a platform trust from this fair data economy. So I think what is interesting about this is that if you look at smart cities, they're really just another service platform for the citizens living in the cities. And that goes for rural areas as well. So we are looking and see that the magic happens when you combine MyData and fair data economy sharing on a normal, like business to business or in a city context. So that's what I will be talking about, how to combine those two things. What is special about Vastuu Group is that we are owned by federations, which makes it possible for us to operate in a more neutral way. And what is interesting also is that we are community driven. So we are part of Teemu, MyData Global. We have been founding partners of that. We have also been part of Jaana's IHAN program and GaiaX, and now finally part also of OASC. So everything we do together with cities or other customers, partners, to have this unique co-creation experience. And the final thing, which is a little bit special with us, is that we are totally driven by the purpose to create better living conditions for people. And there, the trust aspect is the key. So basically, to be honest, and a little bit of a Finnish bad joke, there are too many platforms of greed out there. And I think both Teemu and Jaana are a little bit insuated. No, you didn't say it directly, perhaps, but basically we wanted to call it platform of trust just to show that you don't have to do it platform of greed. But yes, let's go forward. So where the magic happens is that you have to create, as a smart city, if you want to create a service, let's say, platform, we believe strongly that there are two components, at least we have focused on that. You have to be able to create a MyData operator capability, and you have to be able to create a data operator capability. And this is very important because we see basically that if you have one of those things without the other, you will not have a holistic view and you will not have a holistic, let's say, possibility to create a real ecosystem around the smart cities. Now, what is interesting in this context, before I go to the cases, is that there are two aspects to the human-centric data flow, because now I'm talking about personal data, how it can be put into practice. So the one aspect is, of course, how we can get the data to flow inside the city or inside a rural area. And there is interesting that, of course, you need the MyData to get the information about the citizens, but then you need, of course, the data operator capability to break those silos that Jaana and you also, Martin, mentioned. And it's actually silos inside the city and also, of course, outside the city. And this is a big challenge at the moment. We are still in the area where integration, as you said, I think, Martin, moving from integration to interoperability, we are scraping the surface, but we are not there yet. Then the other aspect, which is equally interesting, is that we should think about human-centric data flows between cities. So not just looking at one city, you have the CITYxCITY example from the Finnish guys. I think there are other initiatives around the world as well. But here, the whole point is that how can we create inter-city interoperability standards, both for personal data, i.e. MyData, and then other more like company city data. And I think this is a big challenge because up until now, many people have been focused on how we actually can do it in one city, and that's understandable. But I think this is a very interesting topic as well. So let's go to case number one. So we have something called a human-centric service network. So it's built on this platform of trust that Martin mentioned. So what we did, and we got funding from Business Finland, our innovation funding in Finland. And we created basically a platform, a marketplace, and a way to take a service ecosystem on board. So basically, we made a platform where you can actually create a community around the platform and have any data from any application to any service, but not in any way, in a controlled way. So using those methods and the policies that Jaana was talking about, let's say taking into account fair data economy principles. And this has been really a big thing because now when we have this capability, we can do platform to platform work, we can do marketplace to marketplace, and most important, ecosystem to ecosystem work. But the Human-Centric Service Network project is funded by our government. It's done together with Kuopio, Turku, and Helsinki. And the whole idea with this project is to change the way cities provide their services to the citizens. So today, every city on the planet, I would dare to say, does it from a production approach-centric way. What we want to do is change the whole idea to make it into a human-centric, i.e. citizen-centric approach. So basically, the problem has been that there are so many silos, there are so much lacking data. Today, it has not been possible to actually create a human-centric service network. But what this project is about is that we are creating a possibility to take the service network of a city, the built environment, i.e. the places where the services are being physically delivered, but also, of course, taking into account the virtual environment where the services are being delivered, together with the information about the citizens. And the magical thing about this project is that we can do in the future, cities using these kind of approaches can do mass customization. So that means that you can actually use the information about the citizens to make tailored solutions to the citizens, but actually they are not tailored on an individual level, they are mass tailored. And this enables the city, and you won't probably believe this, to actually save money and increase the citizen experience at the same time. And I think that's quite a cool thing to be able to do. The last thing I want to mention about this project is it always also makes it possible for the actual officials or people working in the cities to make those service networks dynamic. So actually being able to plan, execute, and adapt the service networks regarding what is happening within the citizen community. And also being able for the citizens to affect the way and influence how the services are being created. So the second case is about creating a MyData operator capability within a city, and then showing a concrete case what can be done once that MyData operator capability is created. So the second platform that we have built is called MyData Share, and it's MyData Share is something that is certified by MyData Global as a MyData operator capability. So the idea is that in the city context, we actually create a personal data infrastructure. So in all normal cities, you have physical infrastructure, roads, buildings, and so forth. Now the idea is to be able to create a personal data infrastructure. So the idea is that normal data harmonization, interoperability, we add another layer, which is the personal data. And the interesting thing is that once you have this MyData operator capability, then you can create smart cities where you have human centricness. It doesn't matter if it's an idea to create better personal life and well-being, innovating in terms of energy saving, smart mobility, decreasing maintenance costs and costs for the built environment, or just sharing personal data to help tailor better services, or last but not least, get faster employment and more effective employment on a city level. So we really see that the MyData Share is a tool to help cities to build that kind of personal data infrastructure. Having said that, we have realized from the day one that we are just one small player in this whole equation. So we strongly believe that working with others to actually make these things happen is the only way forward. And like Jaana said, we should stop thinking competition and being scattered. We should think coming together and do cooperation instead of competition. The last one I want to show is that a concrete example how you can create a MyData actually job profile. So basically getting rid of the CVs we know today and actually have verified and qualified data 360 about a citizen wanting to get employed. The benefit with this is that we can do AI-based matching with the ones who wants employees, i.e. the employers, and we can engage all the ecosystem around it. So for an example, let's say City of Espoo could use these kind of tools to actually employ or boost the employment of people with, let's say, high education, but they still have a big trouble of getting employed and they have been out of employment for a long time. The idea is that this is boosting lifelong learning and it's making it possible to create a very compelling MyData-based profile that then can be matched to the different employment services. And I think this is really concrete because we all know that employment is a big issue around the world on both sides. People like us need developers, coders, and then on the other hand, there are many unemployed at the moment. So yeah, but this is, in summary, we believe that you have to have a data platform capability and you have to have a MyData personal data capability. And the magic happens when you start to combine these in a city context. Thank you.
Thank you, Lasse, for this very, very comprehensive overview. Maybe I'll go directly to Raf to reflect from your side. So Raf, please bring up what you want to show. And then we can have perhaps just a quick reflection together afterwards. We are running up against the hour. I think we can take a few more minutes, just a few more minutes over the time, but not a lot. But thank you. I mean, it's good to see so many concrete things. Now more concrete things from you, Raf, from Flanders and from Solid. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me, Martin?
We hear you and we see your slides.
Okay, great. So our agency is at the crossroads of local government, private sector and the citizen, and we ensure that data can flow within the region of Flanders, because more data means more innovation and better public services. So our Minister President, he has put in the coalition agreement and both on the September declaration that we have to put citizens again in control of their data, in line with what von der Leyen said at the European Parliament in September. Now I take you back to 2015. We had a lot of public services on the level of local government, regional government, and federal government, and it was really a maze for the citizen. Then in 2015, we started the Flemish citizen profile, which in fact allows citizens to get insight in the data that government has about them, and also in all statuses of public services. So it's a no wrong board policy, where you can either, if you go to a local government website or a regional government website, you can get insight into your data and get, for instance, a birth certificate. But the challenges we put were that we would like to enable the citizens to reuse their data in a different context. So to reuse, for instance, their diploma within the context of the private sector for their employer, or their domicile address at a utility company, but also allow governments to reuse personal data, such as an email address or a bank account number, without asking the citizen over and over, but just connecting to their personal data vault. Now, we thought it was easy, because within the government we share data already between cities using laws and decrees, but we stumbled upon some hurdles to share it with the private sector. And because citizens were in an unbalanced relationship with the government, we just cannot put a consent module just on the services that were already provided. And then we came up with the idea of experimenting with Solid. It was in 2018, early 18. And the idea was that users could store their own data in pods, personal online data stores, where the user remains in control. So with Solid, you can decide yourself how and where you store your data on which device. And we always compare it to an online USB stick for the web, where you decide which applications have access to your data. For instance, this social media post is in my pod, my picture is in my pod, but if you like it and if you comment it, then the comment is in your pod. So the idea of decentralized applications, where an application can just connect to my pod, I have fine-grained access, or I can give fine-grained access to my data, so I decide which data I share. If I dislike the app, I stop sharing the data and I can connect another stunning app. So the idea why we rewired the architecture to a more me-central architecture is that in that case, the data subject, me and my diploma, becomes the controller of the data. And then it's not the government giving consent. No, then I am in control of my data and I can share it with other parties. And also we use Solid as an interoperability facilitator. So the citizen profile is already in place as local and regional government. And now we have a beta version where we will be moving it to production this year, where the citizen can share, for instance, a diploma as a controller of the data, or connect the parts, the My Citizen profile to a part of a citizen, where the citizen can share the data with the government. Now, this is about the data sharing, but it's also important that we have an interoperability first strategy. So we are fond of the ideas of the MIMS of Open and Agile Smart Cities, as well as the MyData principles, because we don't want to create personal data silos. So in the region of Flanders, we run an interoperability program. It's called the Open Standards for Linked Organizations program, Oslo. And it was a bottom-up grassroots initiative in 2012 already from local governments in order to build a knowledge graph where all data is connected. In 2015, it was moved to the regional level, and we have now a community of 400 contributors working on semantics. So working on use cases, aligning those use cases on data models which build upon international standards, where we use the semantic web as a blueprint, because the web is already there for over 3 decades, and also facilitating interoperability. At this moment, we have over 4,000 minted definitions published on data.flanders.be, both in machine and human readable form, in over 40 domains, and this within one governance framework. So we have a governance framework with open working groups based on the principles of open stands, where public and private partners and academia collaborate on those vocabularies. Those are important for making data of companies and sensor flow, but as well for personal data, because the online memory stick, which I refer to, is not like a dumb memory stick with just some PDF documents. It must be machine readable data, because if we have to transform the data over and over, then it will be not only very costful, but also it will be a problem for innovation, as it will slow down innovation. So therefore, we have an interoperability program, open working groups, a formal body which ratifies the standards, and open source components that help us to publish the standards both in a human and machine readable form. So I both addressed now the fact that we used Solid on different interoperability levels to facilitate that data can flow, but as well the principles of the web. So the semantic standards, it's like an online dictionary that ensures that the data that is in my pod can be interpreted by other business applications. Now, to wrap up, we've seen that by putting the user in control and rewiring existing centralized architectures into a decentralized me-central architecture, we can streamline existing public services and existing data flows within the government, but also towards private partners. We've seen that the principles of Solid were an answer to a lot of our challenges, but we are aware that if we have the first parts, or when by the end of the year we have the first parts in place connected to the citizen profile, then we will have new learnings which will be on policy and on how to lower the hurdles for sharing the data. And I think then when data starts to flow, then we can further improve the ecosystem. We've seen that the integration with the Flemish citizen profile was straightforward with Solid, because ESTELIT is based on the principles of linked data, and we already had an interoperability program Oslo since 2012. We had several data sets which already were aligned to the standards. And we've seen also that rewiring our architecture, that the challenges were not on a technical level, but rather on process innovation and other, and also on the mindset, both on with public and private partners. Now, to conclude, we've seen, and we did some surveys as well, that we have a readiness in our region, both in public and private sector. So I would like to thank you for the opportunity to share our insights, and I'm looking forward to your feedback.
Thank you, Raf. Very, 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 again, encompassing and touching on so many of the issues we have here. We had a question from the audience. So what is a silo? And I think what you're describing is actually like Lasse did before. I mean, how can you turn the organization inside out? So you're not, you know, having this perimeter idea that you have an organization, and as long as that's secure, you can just fiddle around with data. And if you have somehow a way to interface with another organization, phew, you're safe. I mean, that's just completely boom, exploded. Data needs to be able to travel with its context, but not its entire context. Voila, how do we solve this? And I think this is a brilliant example. So we are really reaching the end here. So now Lasse and Raf, perhaps you could have some final short reflection. I mean, how do we tie the knots together here? So I don't know, Lasse, if you want to reflect now, and I give also you, Teemu and Jaana, the opportunity after that, and then we close the session. How do we in practice bring these things together? I mean, of course, yes, there's the idea of a minimal common ground, but which part?
Yeah. I think there's only one answer to that question, and that's we have to figure it out together. So I think the only way to answer that question is that nobody can do it alone. We need to start working together. We need to stop focusing on boundaries. We need to stop focusing on vertical models. We need to think horizontally. We need to think out of the box, as you showed. But most importantly is that we start to work together, and we are not so concerned about, you know, competing with anything, more cooperating with each other. And I think there is a great opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, but I mean, you're all Finnish, apart from Raf. So, Raf, how does that translate out of the box that is called Finland? Sorry Raf, not to stereotype you, Lasse.
Looking what Raf did, he's half Finnish, I would say. Wouldn't you agree, Teemu and Jaana? Really concrete, good guy. We can adopt you, Raf. No problem.
Open for adoption.
Yeah.
It is a global exercise, right? So I mean, how do we actually find a common ground, Raf? I mean, the internet, yeah, great. That was a common ground, worked everywhere. Now we need to add on that.
Well, I fully agree with Lasse. I think we need to cooperate, and I think a few things will happen. I think we have the bottom-up movement, and there we need to agree on standards and policies. Because you refer to the web, Martin. Well, the web was not like a total new technology, but there was a composition of agreements and standards. So I think we need to agree bottom up, figure out together what works. So a huge feedback loop, and then start formalizing those standards from bottom up, level playing fields. And then we will have probably in the rest of the world, but also in Europe. You also mentioned the initiative, the European initiatives. We will have a top-down movement where they will think about which policies, which policy frameworks could create this level playing field for data, and how will we work out policies like public-private people partnerships. And I think we have to combine the bottom-up and top-down movement and like meet halfway.
We call it top-up. Fantastic. So Jaana, quick reflection from you, and then we end up on the global side with Teemu. What do you think? What can we do?
Well, during those 3 years I've been working in this domain, I see more and more familiar faces. So maybe we all familiar faces should stop presenting and start like doing hands-on work together on thematic work groups, like also co-creating more practical solutions based on, because I think we are more and more aware of the things that's happening around even globally. But now we just need to choose and roll our sleeves.
And then that needs to translate into a market, otherwise there's no interesting economy, right? I mean, it should be a real economy. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Voting for that one, Jaana. Teemu, last words.
Yeah, just on the geography, even if we are a little bit Finland skewed here in the panel, just like to take note of that of course, great things are happening in cities, and not just the familiar ones, Flanders and Amsterdam and Barcelona, but plenty of other cities as well. And I think that we just recognize that it's applicable not just in Europe but across the world. I need to learn from those experiences. I think there was on YouTube also the mention of smart villages, which of course we didn't have time to get into now. But being just mindful that of course for individuals, the kind of cities and municipalities are the ones that are very close to you in your everyday life. So I mean, there's enormous opportunities there to use that personal data for the benefit of the citizens, but also for the benefit of reducing costs and for innovation.
Yeah, right. So the minimal part is also necessary in order to all sizes of organizations to actually engage and implement on both the supply and demand side. Okay, thank you very much, guys. Appreciate you taking the time here. Sorry for going a little bit over the clock. We started also a little bit late. I see you, Davor.
Yes, exactly. What a wonderful session, Martin. Really, I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It started with a declaration of affection. It ended with an offer for adoption. So I think it kind of it's also maybe the perfect note to again welcome our new enterprise and strategic partners, Vastuu and MyData Global. So I really enjoy this, although indeed, yeah, it was Flanders and Finland. I think we can take this that step further, of course, because we're working on this as a MIM, right? So it's interfacing, beyond that axis.